all of it is weird, man. I mean, listen,
Yep.
I'm not
Yep.
saying
Very strange.
John Wahl is weird. Okay, that's not. I'm not
Yeah,
passing
yeah,
any judgment on him. But this
Right.
whole situation of we don't really know who the guy who's running the Republican Party is.
Right.
And what, and so, but and then like, okay, there's so many weird pieces of this. Alrighty, welcome in Alabama Politics this week. Josh Moon and
David Person.
how are you, David?
Hanging tough, man. Hanging tough. Another day,
New
another
kids on the block, huh?
penny.
I get you. Yeah, I like it. Original
Yeah,
boy
yeah,
band.
I'm trying to remember, do I even know any New Kids on the Block songs? Was that the name of an album or is that the name of a
I
song?
thought that was the name of a song. I'm not an
Hanging
expert
Tough?
myself. Yeah, but
Okay.
there's somebody who was famous in that group, or who remained famous, right? And New Kids on the Block, who like became an actor or whatnot. But I can't remember which
Was that
one.
Wahlberg?
Wahlberg?
Mark
Was that one of the
Wahlberg?
Wahlbergs? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was
Sounds
Mark.
like it.
Mark was in the Funky Bunch, right? And
Yeah, he was in
Yeah.
that, yeah.
okay, well, I don't know. All right, so
I
that's
feel
it for-
ashamed that I know that much about that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's it for our boy band knowledge. I'm going to say, if you were coming here for that, you're going to be sorely disappointed for the rest of the show. All right, but before we get into this and we start talking about who may or may not be named John Wahl, we're going to tell you first about our fine sponsors of this program. It is Wind Creek Hospitality. They do a fantastic job. They've got 3 great resorts in this state. They sponsor one fantastic podcast in this state, and we're happy to have them on. They're some of the best that you can have as a sponsor because they ask for nothing. They just enjoy the program and enjoy the fact that we're offering voices that you don't often get to hear around here, and telling stories. Matter of fact, we've had Arthur Mothershed on, who runs who's one of the vice presidents of the Porch Creeks and the gaming operations there. We've had him on one time, and we're going to have him on today for our second time. And both times, it's like, hey man, you want to come on the show and then talk a little bit? And it's so, well, am I going to be interesting? And it's like, yeah, of course, man. And so, yeah, we're so it's one of those kind of deals. It's they really are just kind of happy to sponsor the show and let the voices get out there and be heard. And so, but listen, y'all go and see them. They run 3 great resorts in this state, in Montgomery, Atmore, and Wetumpka. The Wetumpka and Atmore resorts are really, really nice. Some kid-friendly opportunities there as well, with the pools and the arcades and bowling and whatnot. So check them out online. Go to Wind Creek Hospitality, Google it up, get you a stay, go to the spa, go to the restaurants, play some games, have some fun. You're not going to regret it. Break up that beach trip. I've been telling you, that's the number 1 tip. This is Josh Moon's number 1 tip for travel. Whenever you can break up a long drive with the family in the car, do it. Do it. It's well worth a couple $100 to stay overnight with them, and everybody's happy and rested, and you're not packed into the car and everybody angry when you get to the beach. So, and especially on the way back. You talk about everybody's sad, everybody's grumpy, everybody's having a bad time. Stay overnight at the casino one night. Play some games, have a nice dinner. Yeah,
that's a great plan, actually, because we know
give your family something to look
people
forward
are disappointed.
Yeah,
people are disappointed when the vacation is over. That's a good way to extend it a little bit.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right, let's get into this. All right, so not a couple of weeks back, I wrote some stories about John Wahl, his brother Noah, and some shenanigans that had taken place up in Limestone County with the Limestone County Republican Party and their executive committee, and some folks asking some very tough questions of John Wahl and Noah Wahl about their management, about this consulting company, WTNS Consulting, that they run, why it was so involved in a number of races, why they were so involved in a number of races out there, and why the party chairman and the county chairman were so involved with running races where one Republican was facing another Republican, and why it was that it seemed that WT&S Consulting continued to show up, and why the money was flowing to them, and was that not a conflict of interest? And there's also been all along through here, I think Kyle Whitmire a few months back wrote a story about a couple of years back, wrote a couple of stories about Wahl and his use of a fake ID to vote. To attempt to vote in this state, and ended up getting a poll worker in Limestone County fired because he stopped him from voting. Or I should say, let me clarify here, because John Wahl would push back on that he got him fired. But the following election season, this poll worker was not invited back to work. And I think some people said that Wahl pressured them into not having him return. And it was because he stopped him from using an ID that he should not have been able to use to vote. So this week, Kyle wrote another story. And that story was about John Wahl receiving a ticket, and which is not an odd thing in and of itself. But see, what makes it so odd is that here we have a person who was going to some great lengths to create his own fake ID in order to vote, jumping through hoops, getting people fired, involving two different secretaries of state in this business, all because of allegedly some religious beliefs that he held, which is fine. It's fine with me. You hold the religious beliefs, that's fine. All right. This was in 2022 when all this was happening. And now we come to find out through this ticket that Kyle found that he had received, that Wahl had received in 2023, that John Wahl not only has an ID, that ID was a driver's license that he obtained in the state of Tennessee in sometime prior to a planned move to Tennessee that he had, according to him, in 2020. This is what he told Jeff Poore on his radio show that yesterday, after this story had come out, was that he had planned to move to Tennessee in around 2020. This was, again, he was the vice chairman of the party at this point, had made it known he was planning to run for chairman at a later date, and then a year later did become chairman, was a state elector in the presidential election for the Republican Party. And so here, it's odd. Would you not say it's odd? All of this is very, very strange.
Well, it doesn't make sense to me that, and I understand that it's not, it's not unusual for people to have car tags from another state, but they live in, a different state, or even driver's licenses, as is relevant in this case, that are from another state. But what is odd to me is that, as far as I know, Mr. Wahl has been in this state for a good amount of time. And okay, again, he's saying that it was his effort to get, to perhaps make a move to Tennessee. But, that was what, 5 years ago?
20, it was at
when he
least,
signed it?
at least 2020, yes. That's what he said,
so
according to him.
Right, according to him. So it seems like to me that by now, he would have had to have renewed his driver's license. Would he not have? I mean, I thought that was every 4 years. Am I miscounting on that?
I'm not sure exactly what the time frame is. I'm assuming it varies from state to state. I don't know.
Well, here in Alabama, I'm saying.
Right,
I mean,
yes.
But I guess what you're saying. Okay, I see what you're saying, because if he has a Tennessee license, maybe it hasn't expired there yet.
Yeah.
And that's something that I guess we ought to look into. But anyway, the bottom line for me is, it does seem strange that a man who is supposed to be a resident of Alabama, long-term resident of Alabama, has a Tennessee license, driver's license, and that it's not in the name that he uses. I just assumed his legal name was John, because that's what everybody calls him. And I've never seen a story or anything. You know how we do in journalism, when we have people like let's say, former Congressman Bud Kramer, You remember we call him Bud, but in formal stories or formal documents, if the word Bud is used, it's in quotes because his actual name is Robert.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a little strange that we've been calling this man John, and that his name has been identified in any publication you find as John, but it's actually Nehemiah.
Nehemiah Ezekiel. And that's, again,
That's weird. That's weird.
right, right. I mean, listen, as I said in the column that I wrote for today, sometimes people get stuck with nicknames, with weird nicknames. I mean, you had, everybody that knows this person that they grew up with or have been around or whatever. They get stuck with a childhood nickname, a family nickname, whatever, and that nickname just becomes their name, and to the point
Yeah.
of it's what appears on their license at times and stuff like that. But it's also you end up with
Well,
and a
but
lot
can
of
I? But,
on a license you also have their real name, and
yeah,
you do have
I was gonna
yeah
say you have to have your legal name. And the other point, Josh, is when has John ever been a nickname? I
right
mean, I've
yeah.
never heard of that. That's a proper noun that is. I mean, it's a
Well,
biblical name.
I can think
You
of
know.
one instance, but I mean I'm not saying, I'm not making any claims when you're called a
Okay,
John, but
I can think of no instances.
you can't think
It's
of
a
an instance
biblical name.
where
It's a
someone is called a
proper
John.
name. Oh, well, that's a little different. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
then it's not being used as a proper name. It's being used in a different way.
Right, exactly.
But
Right.
as a proper noun,
Yeah.
I mean, they come
I,
straight out of the Bible.
yeah.
That's
I mean,
normally
the only time I've ever heard
somebody's
of it
legal
being
name.
used as a nickname is when your name is Jonathan. I mean, that's, what I mean? Then John can be your
Yeah,
nickname.
but yeah, that's possible. That is
Yeah.
possible. But again, in this guy's case, according to what was on his driver's license, there's no Jonathan.
No,
So
there's
I
no
don't know.
John.
It's just it's very
Well, what
strange.
makes it even more strange is that during the appearance on the Porsche show, when Jeff Porsche says to him, "But you're using your middle name, correct?" Yeah, and so I mean, I think to what Poor was attempting to do was lessen the blow somewhat
Right.
here, lessen the
Right.
weirdness out of this, and because I think he assumed, like a lot of people, that maybe his name was Nehemiah John Wahl,
Right.
and
Right.
but the ticket clearly shows that his name on the driver's license is Nehemiah Ezekiel Wahl.
Hmm.
And all of it is weird, man. I mean, listen,
Yep.
I'm not
Yep. Very
saying
strange.
John Wall is weird. Okay. That's not, I'm not
Yeah.
passing
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
judgment on him, but this
Right.
whole situation of we don't really know who the guy who's running the Republican Party is, and
Right.
what, and so, and then like, okay, there's so many weird pieces of this. All right. So let's follow this little chain here. Okay. So we have this situation where he's caught with a fake ID, right? And then
Uh-huh.
the entire story of this fake ID is, well, his family refuses to get IDs because of their religious beliefs about photo identification. Okay. But we also now know that he has a photo ID. In addition
Right.
to that,
Right.
we also know that the fake ID that he used had his picture on it.
There it is. Yeah. There
You
it
know,
is. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense either. So what is the real reason? What's happening here that has led to all of this strangeness and weirdness out of this whole deal? And maybe there is some odd, out of the ordinary. Let me just say that. Let me not put a negative connotation on this, okay? An out of the ordinary religion that they practice, okay? That has, that's led to this situation. And I have, in talking to
what was
people, that
well,
they've
what
said maybe this is the result of a bunch of adults at this point in their lives having to deal with the crazy decisions made by their parents when they were young, to not give them social security numbers, to not report them, to not do these
Oh,
sorts of things.
okay.
So maybe they're
Okay.
now trying to
Okay.
overcome it, which I get this. But again, it doesn't fall in line with what we're saying. You know, none of the things that have
And
happened really line up with that.
and I would argue that if that's really the story, if that's if this is not just some really I'll say brazen way to obscure the fact that he's not a resident of the state
Right.
or something, if that's not the backstory, if the backstory instead really is, well, it was some decisions our parents made due to religious reasons or whatever,
Yeah.
it's time to say that.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
time to say that.
Yeah.
Because as you pointed out in your column, I mean, what we're really looking at is a situation where potentially we're going to have the double jeopardy of a man in Tennessee endorsing or certifying certifying a man who allegedly lives in Florida to be the next governor of Alabama, or at least to run to be the next governor of Alabama. That's pretty doggone strange, and even for Alabama, that's strange.
Yes, I mean it's like mind-boggling. I mean, it's like, you know, there's so many questions that fall into this. And listen, you know, here's the other thing. Now, the worst thing you can do. I just let me just give everybody a little bit of a lesson in PR and how to handle crisis situations. Okay, the
Yeah.
absolute worst thing you can do, okay, is when you're dealing with reporters like Kyle, like me, like other people who at our heart are just the nosiest assholes you're ever going to meet. Okay. We just, and we have been trained in our nosiness. Okay. And have been told for years that our nosiness is our gift. You know, and our abilities to dig and dig and dig and dig and dig have been praised by years of working for editors and other people. The worst thing you can do is give us half answers, give us untruths, and then make it seem as though we're the ones who are out to get you because of some agenda or bias or something, and continue to hide these things and believe that it's going to go away. Because let me tell you what's happening right now. Okay. I'm not even doing it, but I can tell you what's happening. There are people right now who read this story and they have taken that ticket and they have said, look at his address. I wonder who's tied to that. I wonder who's tied to this address. What does this address have to do with John Wahl? What does this address look like? Who are these people who own this address? Where are they? What was their connection to John Wahl? What is their connection to John Wall's girlfriend? What is John Wall's connection to this girl who is working for a senator in Tennessee, and now her connection to a polling firm that's labeled Montgomery Research? Wait a minute, Montgomery Research? What does that have to do with why does that keep popping up on these other sites that's dealing with Republicans and Democrats? Wait a minute. What is happening here with all this stuff? And they are in that rabbit hole so deep that they are finding doors to that thing that even Alice doesn't know about. Okay. And
Alice in Wonderland reference. That's pretty good.
You like that?
Okay.
You like that?
That's pretty good. You slid that in there. Yeah.
I'm just saying, man, we're going to figure it out. You know, if we don't figure it out, we're going to figure out a lot of it. If we don't figure out all of it, we're going to figure out a lot of it. And especially if there isn't anything, this is the thing that's always driven me insane with people is oftentimes you'll run into folks who are trying to hide like some little insignificant tiny nugget somewhere. And in trying to do that, they create these whole elaborate schemes, mainly because they end up lying to cover up lies. And that, instead of just saying, yeah, you know, this happened and here's the situation and getting out from underneath it, because, you know, everybody knows that within one news cycle these days. Everything is old news and nobody remembers it happened. So you can basically do anything. I mean, I fully expect that this time a month from now, somebody will say, "Hey, you remember that Diddy trial? Wasn't that like 3 years ago?" And nobody will remember anything that come out of it, you know? Yeah, it's just that's just the way we're flowing these days, you know, with
So
we're giving away $400 million jets and everybody's happy.
yeah. Yeah. Like, if we cut her to the president, even
Yeah.
though that apparently there's so much pushback on that now that I don't know. I'm still waiting to see if it'll actually happen. But here's the thing about that I want to ask you about this Wall situation, because you've done reporting on it, you've written a column about it. What is the impact of this on Wall being the chair of the Republican Party internally? What's going on with Alabama Republicans?
Well, I think that I talked to several. Yeah,
Uh,
talked to several this morning. I really wanted to get in a nice nap after getting the little one off to school, but couldn't do that because I had to answer the phone that kept ringing off the hook. But among them were several Republicans, and
mhm.
I've talked to a bunch more over the course of the last few weeks. After writing the story that I wrote about him and his brother. Um, you know, I get the sense that they are very embarrassed by this, but they don't really know what to do. They don't really, and I think it's a black eye for them, and I think it's they're in a position where they could be, really powerful. Honestly, I mean, they have Trump on their
The
side. They have
ones
Trump showing.
raising the ones raising questions, you mean?
Right. Well, I think the party itself could be very powerful,
Oh,
as a
oh,
as
you
a
saying?
like a national
Oh, I see.
model of and,
Okay.
and really
Mhm.
produce people that could go on to higher levels of government if it were not for this kind of stigma that's now been attached to this thing. I think because of just the weirdness of it, and it's just the weirdness of the whole thing at this point that they are struggling with. And I think a lot of them would like to do something, but they missed their opportunity. They just reelected him party chair. I mean, just a couple months ago, they reelected him party chair. And so he's in again. And I don't know if there's a recall thing. I don't know if they could actually get him to resign this seat if they put that much pressure on it. But I don't get the sense that is a big movement in that direction to do that.
Well,
But
and that's what I was going to speculate about a little bit, because already we know that they were not bothered enough by all of the smoke and mirrors around Tuberville's residency issues, and they were more than willing to. And I'm talking about the party as a collective. They were more than willing to let that happen. So this is just one more thing, another residency issue. He's explaining it away. They'll probably let it. Probably let it go. But I think it should be offensive to the I'll say the grassroots Republicans, the people that are depending on the Republican Party to represent their best interests, and to the rest of us in the state of Alabama as well, because you've got people who clearly don't value the state enough. If this is true, if there's really, if there really are deeper questions and problematic issues with Wall and with Tuberville, then I think all of us as Alabamians should be offended, because we want people representing us who have skin in the game in our state, and who, at least in theory, relate to a lot of what we have to deal with in this state.
yeah, yeah, no, it's not a commuter position to be governor,
Right.
and I think that it deserves somebody that's not compromised as well, who's going to take seriously the job of certifying whoever is going to run for governor and really take a look at those credentials. But All right, let's slide out. We're gonna come back. We're gonna have Arthur Mothershed from Wind Creek Entertainment on and talk about the gambling issues that went down this legislative session, and also their purchase recently of the Birmingham race course, and kind of get into all that and what the plans are for there. Should be an interesting conversation. We'll be back in just a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. All righty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person. Hey, we are happy now, always, to have with us Arthur Mothershed from Wind Creek Entertainment.
Yep.
They sponsor us, and as we've said, they're the absolute greatest sponsors of a program that you could ever ask for, because they just like the program, and and we have to beg them to come on and say some things every now and then, but we do it because Arthur is an expert on gambling in the state, as he should be, since he runs a nice, large gambling organization that is now one of the top brands in the country, if not the world. And, I wanted to get you on, Arthur. First of all, thanks for coming on and spending some time.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. I wanted to get you on for a couple of reasons. But one, first off, is the session. I think going into the session, this last legislative session here in the state, a lot of people assumed that after the last one, when we kind of came pretty close, a vote or two away from getting a bill passed, a gambling bill passed, that this might be the year, that we were going to finally get something done. We were going to get over that hurdle, get over the hump. That obviously did not happen. And I guess you were there, spent a lot of time up there. What in your mind was the cause of that? What kind of fell apart?
The biggest thing in the bill that kept us from getting to the 21 votes that we need was distribution of funds. There was a disagreement last year that kind of happened on the floor, and this year it was happening behind the scenes. Senator Albritton was pushing very hard for a gambling bill. Felt like it was bringing enough revenue into the state to, sort of fix several of our deficits, but we couldn't, they just couldn't get to an agreement until, pretty close to the end of the session. And then, as everybody knows, the Senate Pro Tem put out a message basically saying that it was dead for this year. And I'm assuming because he didn't feel like he had enough time to get it through the Senate and then through the House.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will add real quick that I think there's a disconnect between House and Senate. For some reason, the Senate has this aversion to table games. I'm not quite sure why. I've talked to several of them, and they can't really articulate why they have such a big aversion. Because gambling is gambling. I mean, when it comes down to it, I do understand the aversion maybe to online gaming because they feel like there's a lack of control and people can do it from the bedrooms and not sure the 12-year-old kid's not getting dad's phone while he steps out to have a smoke or whatever and placing bets. I understand that to a degree. But, the aversion to table games, I don't understand. And every time you take away something from the package, we've always supported a comprehensive plan. And every time you take away something from the package, you reduce the revenues that the state badly needs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm the same way. I've often made this argument of I don't understand what sort of argument you could make for bad casinos. I mean, if every time you take something away, you're creating a lesser product that you're going to sell to people. And if you're in the business of licensing casinos, you would think that you would want to license the best possible product that you could provide to people, because at a point that's just going to work against you. But I also have this weird feeling because I've long argued that there's this whole industry that has been created over the course of however many years we've been doing this gambling debate now, 20, 30 years. There have been lobbyists, there have been attorneys, there have been hangers on that have created entire, an entire career out of this fight, basically, put their kids through college on the backs of this argument. And, I think some of this, and I want to just get your feeling on this as well, in two questions about it. One, I mean, do you feel like a lot of this stuff is just, well, like when they throw this up about table games, where it doesn't make any sense? The reason it doesn't make any sense is because it's not necessarily supposed to. It's just another obstacle that some people are putting in front of you to kind of keep this thing from ever passing. And two, how do we break that logjam? How do we get past this deal where you're going to have to get over the hump of these folks, not only the lobbyists and folks, but there's been a lot of politicians that's made a lot of money off this, whether it be campaign donations or whatever. How do we get past that and get it over the hump?
I think the industry, I think we got to take a different approach this upcoming year. I won't even say session. I think too often we wait until the session starts and then we start working, for this agenda or trying to push this agenda across the finish line. I think, we've got to do a better job of getting the voices of the people of Alabama heard, even if it's specifically to table games or whatever the issue may be. So, we're already in the process of setting up more polling before the summer even starts, focus groups, so that we can get a better message to the legislators and at least give them some cover if they believe that the people are against table games, to try to show them that that's not the case. We've done some limited polling on that in the past, but I don't think we've done a good enough job in district specific for sure, where there are certain legislators that say, hey, my district doesn't support this, to give them information. And they may believe that, because I get it. You go to church on Sunday and you talk to some of those constituents. They may well say, I'm anti-gaming, or the pastor may preach against it. Certainly happens in my neck of the woods. But I think at the end of the day, the vast majority of people support gambling and support a revenue stream to fix some of Alabama's financial woes.
Is that following up on what you just said, Arthur? Have you gotten the sense from your polling that is still a real issue, that religious people, religious organizations are a main part of the reason that has been such a struggle to advance progressive gambling legislation in the state of Alabama?
They, in particular areas, maybe, but across the state, the sentiment is, and we broke it down in one of our pollings, by party, by race, by age, by religious affiliation. And certainly when you get into certain pockets of religious affiliation, you start to see the opposition grow a little bit. But by and large, even most religious organizations now understand and don't really have a huge aversion. They may tell you they're not going to go, but if somebody else wants to, they're starting to understand that, maybe it's not their place to tell them what to do in their free time.
Does Wind Creek have the same challenges in other states in terms of establishing and growing its business as it does in this state, as it has in this state?
So we have a keen eye on Florida and Georgia. I mean, they're neighbors of ours, right? So anything that may happen there, we see some of the same themes, especially in Georgia, where it looks like the legislation may get close, and then at the end of the day, it kind of halts. And a lot of it's, based on religious opposition or the perceived religious opposition. And then, people standing on some moral belief that gambling is just evil. I did have an interesting conversation with a pastor in Alabama yesterday. I won't call his name, but, he brought up to me, he's like, gambling can be a sin in his eyes if it's overdone. He said, but, the Bible also talks about gluttony and overeating, and a lot of people in South Alabama especially don't seem to have an aversion to gluttony. So I thought that was pretty spot on whenever he brought that, myself included. I'll put myself in that camp.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's in church circles. We talk about cherry picking scripture and biblical concepts. That's what it sounds like he's talking about.
I'll tell you, David, one of the funniest stories I heard was in going around and touring the reservation was about the preacher who won the jackpot down there, and they sent the limo to pick his wife up. She wasn't going till she heard how much he'd won. Then she was all about that limo, buddy. But yeah. Oh no, that's great, man. That's great.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. There's one other thing I kind of wonder about, Arthur. You said that you have you had a conversation with a pastor. Um, is that anything that Wind Creek has ever strategically considered, which is to directly, instead of seeding, and I'm thinking about my own pastor here. I don't know how he's going to feel about me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Seeding ground to that argument, and instead maybe doing a direct, I don't want to say attack, but I'll just say addressing that argument more directly, the argument that comes from the religious community, since Alabama is such a church-centric state.
When we were pursuing our license in Illinois, we actually had great conversations with several pastors in that area. One of them actually testified on our behalf at the Illinois Gaming Board hearing where we were awarded the license. So now his take was, I'm not going to come to the casino, but it's going to be here. And if it's going to be here, we want the right people to run it. We want people that, with high moral values to run it, make sure it's done right, and make sure that underage people aren't getting on the floor, and make sure that people that are gambling too much, are addressed and not, and don't continue, that bad behavior. And so, yeah, we've had experience with that.
Okay.
I think one of the things that I think a lot of people assume, another reason why a lot of people assumed the gambling was going to get done was because y'all got a pretty big deal done heading into the session, and that was the purchase of the Birmingham race course. And I know it seemed as though from talking to y'all and reading a bunch of the interviews that y'all have done over the course since that purchase was announced, it seems as though y'all have, and you correct me on any of this, of course, but y'all had two different plans. One, if a gambling package was passed, and another if one wasn't. Obviously, we're still with the one wasn't at this point. But what? So, I mean, I guess is that sort of accurate? And can you kind of describe what the plans are for Birmingham?
Yeah, that's correct. Obviously, if a comprehensive bill had passed, we'd have been able to launch some pretty elaborate plans much more quickly than we're going to be able to right now. We still think that, that area deserves a better gaming experience. So we're certainly going to do things to make that a better experience for the customers. And that may mean moving into a temporary facility that, is more modern, more updated. That used to be a mecca. It used to be a grand building. But, I mentioned to somebody yesterday, I used to look a lot better when I was in my 20s. Age has a way of making all of us look a little different, right? So, but we still think that area deserves a better gaming experience. So we'll do something temporary. Not to say if by some chance a special session or 2026 by some miracle they decide to do something prior to an election cycle that wouldn't speed up our plans again. But if had comprehensive package passed, we'd have pretty quickly jumped into a full scale resort design and something that the area could be really, really proud of.
There we go. Yep. I mean, y'all were talking about more than $500 million up there, right?
Sure. Yeah,
If that package had passed. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And,
It's a
we
shame.
focus in a lot of times on, as best we can, on local designers, local contractors. So, a lot of that money would have churned right back through the state.
Man, that's another thing, and I've tried. I've really tried over the last year or so. Especially after coming and going on the tour and talking to so many. I mean, I met really I just so many great people around there at the reservation, and I tell this to people all the time. I mean, it was such a nice. It was like going in and meeting a bunch of people who were part of a family. Because they were good people and they talked about each other. And it was the same way with a family now. Like you went in and you talked to somebody and then you got the story about, you're not gonna believe what his crazy ass did. I mean, it was, and it was those types of things because literally, man, David, I'm telling you, they've all known each other their entire lives and they're telling stories about when they were kids and, and what they used to do to each other and the crazy things they used to do and stuff. And that's, but it was very endearing, first of all. But, also the to watch kind of what was remarkable about it was to consider the growth that has happened and then to learn about the various businesses and things. I mean, we're talking about 15 other businesses that are run out of the hub there that deal with federal contracts that bring in what is it, $250 million a year or so in
Yeah,
federal contracts now.
that's correct.
I mean, partnerships with Disney, with the air, with all branches of the military, basically, to do all sorts of things all around the world. And then not to, then on top of that, you have all of these casinos, south side of Chicago that we've discussed before, Pennsylvania, in the Caribbean, and to know that they've become a brand, manage some other casinos as well. And the idea of, do you feel like at this point that people now are starting to understand that when they talk about giving the Porch Creeks a compact or a casino license here, that it's not some little hokey homegrown outfit that doesn't really know what they're doing and we're just doing them a favor, and that this money is going, if we do this, it's going to be run right and the money is going to be returned to the state. Is that message getting through?
I think for some people, yeah. Uh, but Josh, jealousy is a real thing, man. So, 20 years ago, you could look at us and say, hey, they're just learning the business. They really don't have their feet, solidly on the ground. And that could be an excuse. And then as we've grown, jealousy, unfortunately, I believe has become, one of the main obstacles we have to overcome so that people understand that this isn't about just, making Porch Creek better. It's about making the state better. And, we've always pitched that. Um, I know the billion dollar plan back in 2020 or 20, whatever it was that we pitched that idea, didn't really get a whole lot of steam, but no one else has come to the state with a package like that. No one else has even approached, saying, hey, if you do this, we'll pay $750 million in license fees because we're Alabamians. We're Porch Creek Indians, but we're also Alabamians, and we want to succeed for sure, but we want the state to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just it's always struck me as so odd, this the attitude, and what's really, let me ask you this. I know that this session in particular, you spent a lot more time in Montgomery, trying to work on a lot of this stuff. Um, did it strike you as did me? What's always been most disappointing to me is that you go in and you talk to these folks, especially the legislators who've been there for a while, and you talk to them about gaming, and it's in a lot of cases, I hate to say it this way, I mean, it's like talking to a small child, and because of the lack of understanding, and you come to the realization pretty quickly that they're not. It's not that they're not smart enough; it's that they haven't cared enough to really wrap their head around the issue, and that to me has been one of the more disturbing parts of this, is just trying to educate people on some of the nuances of this, and is did you, how much of your time was spent on that this last session, and do you feel like that has gotten any better?
I think the legislature understands the issue a lot more now. Years past, I would say, probably didn't understand it, and you know, the federal money that was coming in over the last several years didn't make it a priority. I mean, for the change, the state could say, "Hey, we really don't need much money." That's changing back the other way now. But no, I would say they have a much better grasp. Several of them at least have a much better grasp on the gaming issue.
Hey, Arthur, can I ask you another quick question here? Um, when you were talking about the jealousy, my mind actually went in another direction. As a black man in America and in the state of Alabama, I'm certainly sensitive to the history of this country and how it has affected my ancestors. I wonder if any of the pushback that the Porch Creeks get is rooted in that history, and that maybe what's jealousy is maybe even more than just jealousy. I mean, have you or any of the tribal leaders ever thought about that or talked about that?
Not really. Could be a factor, for sure.
Okay.
Just in a lot of the conversations that you hear, sort of are not that we hear, but that are relayed to us. And there has been conversations about don't they have enough? Right? And that's why I use the word jealousy. When will they have enough? And we're like every other business. We want to grow, we want to prosper, we want to do better than we did last year. But that doesn't change the fact that we don't want Alabama to do that. We've been accused of trying to create a monopoly, even though we've worked with the track owners since 2021. Uh, and prior to that, I won't say it was just us not working with them. I don't think there was an appetite for them to work with us. So I think that went both ways. But when we fought the bill last year, the final version of the bill, I mean, we readily admit that there was language in there that we thought was actually punitive to the tribe, not just that we didn't like. We thought it was kind of punitive to the tribe as it related to Birmingham. So we did oppose that bill, and we got accused then of, you just guys want to create a monopoly. And I said, what business would sit back and, just say, bring a bill on that would possibly cost you 35% of your revenue? No business.
The don't they have enough argument sounds vaguely similar to some of the things that I know black people sometimes hear. Haven't we done enough for you all, or don't you, or the suggestion, the veiled suggestions that we don't know our place. That's what that sounds like to me, Arthur. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Yeah. You may have a point. We do our best to leave race out of it, even though we know that in certain people's minds that, race will always be a factor. I believe, or maybe it's just my me being naive, that I want to believe that we've progressed as a state, as a nation, to a point where we're getting better. We're not there, but that we're getting better at least.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I lean a little more towards David on this one. Because it's I've heard the conversations. I know and it's because I'll say it. It's I think it goes back to exactly what you said. There seems to be this expectation that y'all are expected to be benevolent in some sort of way and give up
Yep.
things,
Yep.
and bend where if we have a similar situation with some other company, and I'll say this too. Now I'll say this too in defense of maybe of some of these folks. I think some things that may be considered racial are also tied to people's thinking about gaming, their hangups on gaming itself, in some instances where well, these gaming guys are just coming in and they're wanting this and they're wanting that and they're just going to take money from and they don't treat it as a business. I mean, it's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard of in my life, and the way a lot of people talk about gaming in this state to this point. And I've argued with so many people that these comprehensive gaming bills are jobs bills. If you think about them in that
Mhm.
way, what other industry?
Mhm.
No, that's what I told one of these people that always opposes this, which some of these folks should honestly get challenges in the next election. But I said, what? Tell me what other industries coming in here to you and saying to you, we're going to bring 12,000 to 15,000 jobs. We're going to create local economic booms all over your state by what we're doing. We're going to hire local companies. We're going to hire minority companies. We're going to hire, the population. This is not even including construction and stuff. And oh yeah, by the way, after we do all of this, we're also going to give you as part of our revenue every year, roughly $1 billion for your coffers. And don't worry
Mhm.
about any economic incentives. We don't need them. We're going to
Mhm.
pay you for the license to operate. Okay. What other one? And there's no answer. And they treat it as if they're giving you some gift, and instead of looking at it as a business. And I don't know how to get past that mindset. I really don't.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, most people coming in offering 10,000 jobs or better would be asking for tax breaks, tax incentives, and
Mm.
other things. So I agree with that point. But again, gambling's looked at as a different industry, and they're making all this
Yeah.
money. And in some cases, that's true. But and there are other cases where where there's intense competition, and that's what a comprehensive bill would bring forward. Where it's the margins get tougher there too. So, but again, yeah, you're right. We come in and we just want to be good neighbors, and we want to try to help the state again. Like I said, be better. And But
Yeah.
we can't understand why we can't get something past the finish line.
I don't either. And I'll tell you this, I've said it a lot of times on here. If people want to understand what could happen in this state, if you did it the right way and people took the money and actually spent it in the right ways, go to the reservation sometime, take a tour around, look at what's happening there, look at what they've done,
Yeah.
look at how they've treated
Yeah.
people, and look what could happen in this state overall if we did it on a grander scale. But, I don't know. Maybe we'll
And
get
take
there
a
at some point.
and Josh, take a walk through the casino. I mean, just the number of people, the diversity of people, not just in terms of race, but gender and age. I mean, that was something I really noted. I mean, it's just, the economic impact that the Wetumpka Casino is having on that community is huge. It's significant.
Oh yeah, it's just all of the little tropes that you hear about this stuff are so outdated and over. It's crazy. It really is. But hey, Arthur, man, we appreciate it. I know you're busy, and you got a ton of stuff going on, and you probably, I don't know, we probably caught you flying from one destination to another destination, and but we do thank you, man, for spending some time with us and for what you do for the state and what you do for us. We really do appreciate the sponsorship, and hopefully we've helped send some folks your way, and that they can get the same experience that David and I have had while we've been around there and working with y'all, and because it is great, and we wish you luck in the future.
Yep. Thank you guys for having me.
Yes, sir.
All right. Take care.
It is Arthur Mothershed as Wind Creek Entertainment. It's just, I mean, they're the best, and I hope that we can finally get some stuff done here that kind of brings us into this century somewhere in terms of gaming and stop this nonsense. All right, let's slide out. We'll come back in just a minute. Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. All righty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Our thanks to Arthur Mothershed and the fine folks at BCI Wind Creek Entertainment for, all they do. I mean, it's I've been very impressed by them and how they have handled business, especially of late. People say all that. Well, they sponsor the podcast. I mean, come on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we appreciate what they do and how they help out here and stuff. We absolutely do. That's without question. But we've talked about this before. I took issue with some of the previous plan, the $1 billion plan that Arthur mentioned. It was one of the people that did not receive it well, as he talked about, was me. I felt like it was not the best plan for the state. It may have worked. Hell, it probably would be better than what we got now. They were probably right about that. But, I felt like there was a better way to go about this, that now he talks about, creating the competition. That was one of my arguments at that point, was this doesn't create the competition that you need. And so I felt that was the better way to go. So I haven't always agreed. They haven't always agreed with me. We've had our back and forth. But, to put that aside, I'll say this, to have a disagreement with somebody like me and then to set it aside and still sponsor this podcast, I think says a lot. Okay. I think it says a lot.
Does.
It
does.
And listen,
it says a lot about them. Yeah.
A lot about
and about you. And about
right.
you.
Well, I mean, me mainly. I've risen above. Okay.
Well,
I've risen above. I'm kidding. Completely kidding. It's one thing to give the money. It's another to take the money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Come on.
That's right. But I think your point is well taken. I mean, your support of Wind Creek Entertainment is about a whole lot more than just this podcast. It's what they do across the state. And I can say long before we had this podcast, years before we had this podcast, I remember being at the opening of Redstone Gateway here in Huntsville, that sort of plaza with a lot of businesses right there near the entrance to the Arsenal. And I was really pleasantly surprised to learn that it was the Porch Creek Indians who were primarily responsible, if not exclusively responsible, for that development. And all that it gave to Huntsville, the city of Huntsville, and the Redstone Arsenal community, the business community here. And then I began to learn, based on that, Josh, about all of the many other places that the Porch Creek Indians were investing in this city and in this county. And it was really mind-blowing. So I've been a fan of theirs just on the economic investment tip for quite a while, well before we ever got to this point in this arrangement.
I'll say this, and I've said it to some other people. I've said it to my wife a couple of times, and I really sometimes when I think about it am kind of ashamed in the way that, not necessarily that I behaved, but in the way that the work that I didn't do to come to a better understanding of some things that were happening with the Porch Creeks. And to not, I'll tell you, I think a lot of people should also join me in this, and in the lack of understanding of what they have been able to do with the money that they've made. Okay, I think that is something that it's not talked about enough. People don't pay enough attention to it. They get sucked into the greed and the flashiness because they see the big gleaming casinos, that have been built and stuff. And they don't, you're walking around, Keith Martin, meeting the people who work. And listen, this was not just some, deal where I had a guide and I couldn't speak to people. I went wherever I wanted to go, talk to whoever I wanted to talk to, and it was, I mean, it's just, it's hard to explain the genuineness of it. It really is. It's hard to explain just what they've done with, let's say, like the pre-K programs and things, and to watch the recreation center and how they've built that out to encompass the surrounding communities and welcome those folks in, to give the kids something and some education, and what pride they've taken in that. And all of it was done with this sort of, this mindset of, it's like tinged with just like, have you ever known somebody that was poor, like for most of their lives, and then they hit it big, and they kind of have this mindset of being almost ashamed of their wealth, and how well off they have it. That's kind of the sense that you got there. We've made this amount of money, and it's not, they shouldn't feel this way, but it's almost like they feel kind of guilty to have the excess, and they're constantly looking for a way to do good things with it. Does that make sense? I mean,
I see what you're saying. Sure.
That's the feeling that I got.
Sort of a, they feel a sort of an innate obligation
to
use the money to do good because they've been blessed the way they've been blessed.
Yeah, and because they grew up the way that they grew up, and the way they were so
suffered the way they suffered.
They were so poor and so neglected and so often mistreated and stuff. They wanted, they knew the lack of opportunities that so many of them had. And then now they have that, and it's become like this driving force in their brain. I mean, like one of the first things that Keith said was, look, he's like, here's what you got to keep in mind. He said, everybody talks about us wanting to get this bill done or this bill passed and these things done, and about, how much money we're going to make and all that stuff. He said, let me tell you what I think every day. He said, if something happens in Montgomery and this falls apart for whatever reason, or we lose something, he said, I got to come over here and figure out what I'm going to cut and what I'm going to take away from these people that we've done, and what joy and pride and that we have, and what we've been able to give. What are we not going to be able to do now? What am I going to take away from these kids, or from the folks at the senior center, or the folks, at the medical center? What am I going to take away? And that is, I mean, that's why I talk about it like that. And I mean, honestly, it was something that changed my perspective and my viewpoint on them, and what they've been able to do. And I just wish that we could adopt that throughout the state, that mindset of let's go in, let's do this the right way, and let's take the money and let's treat people better all over the state. Let's figure out how to give out these scholarships. Let's figure out how to do this Medicaid expansion, or hell, figure out a way. If you don't want to do Medicaid expansion, figure out a way to expand health care in some other manner that treats folks throughout the state here and provides them with opportunities to get healthier and get better. And that just to watch that change and to see how it's affected the folks on the reservation with what they've been able to do on a small scale. It's just remarkable. And, I just wish that we took a better approach like they have. And so that's the reason why I talk about them like I do. And I'm not going to apologize for it. They can stop sponsoring tomorrow, and I'm still going to talk about them like this. I may not do it from the podcast, but we'll, it's
But
still,
I think
it is good.
Well, and as you're saying, I think the good that they're doing, they're not just, they could easily be content with that good being confined to the reservation, but they're not. And I love that.
Yeah, no, and it's, you hear oftentimes of people being glorified for, the returns to the stockholders and the amount of money for the bottom line and the expansion and the this and that. And, certainly they've been able to expand, and they have some money where they're able to go into other markets and stuff. But to look at the amount that's been returned back into that community, it just says a ton. So,
I think
all right.
so.
Also, so thanks to Arthur, thanks to SPLC and what they do as well.
Mhm.
Also great people doing good work.
Awesome.
They've got a good program coming up here as well, with some artistic things that have been happening at the Civil Rights Museum. So they're going to have that as well, going on. All right. So let's, was there anything that we really needed to talk about before we got into
I don't think anything super
right-wing
pressing.
nut? There was, we closed out session this week. There is talk of a special session coming at some point. I know that some people were speculating that gambling may be a part of that special session. I don't know how likely that is, but I know that they are now really concerned about revenue shortfalls in the very near future from some of these budgets. And so they may start taking a real hard look at some of that. But,
As you say that, I just have to say real quickly, it frustrates me to no end. Pardon me. It frustrates me to no end that in this state, we've already got solutions to revenue shortfalls.
Yeah.
Completely legalize gambling the way. Oh, pardon me. Sorry, I got a tickle in my throat.
I know that feeling well. I've had one now for the past month, it seems.
Yeah. The way that, we were discussing with Arthur and have discussed on the program before. Pardon me. And also expand Medicaid.
Yeah.
There you go.
Legalize
revenue
weed.
shortfall's over.
Yeah. Legalize weed. Stop screwing around with the THCs.
Well,
stuff that we
too.
have now. And I think, honestly, that we're at a point where hopefully, we filmed this thing on Wednesdays, record, film, whatever, on Wednesdays. And there was supposed to be some executive changes that the governor's office was going to make to that THC bill that they passed, which was really, honestly, I like Andy Witt a lot. He's one of my favorite Republicans. I like what he did with gambling. I think he's a good guy. I think this bill's a terrible bill. I think that, I don't know how much. I know Andy's defended it, so I guess I'm going to tie him to it completely here. But this was not a good bill. It seemed to be like patched together. It was confusing to a lot of people. It kills businesses that do not deserve to be killed. It aids businesses that don't deserve to be aided. It just, it makes arbitrary distinctions among products that should not be made. And I just, altogether, the problem that I have most of all with it is nobody cares. They talked about it like this was a dangerous product. It's not. The best they could cite was some person that got sick for a little while. I mean, and that was
Mhm.
the whole danger to this thing. If you wanted to make it 21 and above, okay, that's fine. Do 21 and above and regulate
Yeah.
it, to I don't know, however you want to regulate it. But I just to pull these products off the shelves and do this stuff when it
Yeah.
actually is helping people and so many people rely on it. And by the way, to do so out of stores where you're also selling alcohol that's killing
Thank
thousands
you.
of people
Thank
a
you.
day. I mean, come on,
Thank you.
man. What are we
Yeah,
doing
not
here?
only and not only alcohol, but there's this synthetic version of I'm going to say marijuana. I think that's the right way to say it. But there's some of these synthetic products out there that are also doing a lot of damage, from what I understand, especially to children and young people. So we're zigzagging around the marijuana issue when the reality is, as you said, probably or as you've alluded to, the best thing that we could do is regulate it, tax it, and set up a structure so that it's safe for people to get. We can protect children, underage young people, from having access to it, and right now I think anybody with a teenager probably knows that it's not that challenging for young people to get to weed as it currently stands right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and put some legal structures in place with civil, incentives and in order to do business the right way, and criminal penalties where it's not being done, so that the state and the community and the society can benefit. Stop zigzagging around it because of nearly 100-year-old tropes about marijuana.
Yeah. Yeah. No, listen, there's no better example of how far people's biases can go
Mhm.
than, I mean, just in the ignoring of facts than
Mhm.
when we're dealing with marijuana. All right. You cannot come into me and convince me that this is some terrible product that must be stripped from the shelves while at the same stores you're selling alcohol and tobacco. Okay.
And
And not only that, you're selling tobacco
and
to 19-year-olds.
right. So you got tobacco already in the stores, you got alcohol already in the stores, and you've got the state in the alcohol
Yes.
business.
Yes, yes. I mean, and look, I'll tell you this. I can make a damn fine argument that the soft drinks you're selling are worse for you than the marijuana that we're talking
Hey,
about.
with all the sugar, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great point. That's
Uh,
a great point. And not just the sugar, but some of these drinks
yeah.
that have been infused with so much caffeine
Yeah.
that people are abusing.
Yeah.
And people with and I'm somebody that has had heart issues, and other people that have heart issues are very vulnerable to, but I don't see anybody getting all up in arms about those things either.
No, I know. It just I'm, as we've talked about before, I'm a pragmatist, okay? And so
Mhm.
things have to make sense to me, otherwise it drives me insane.
Yeah.
And you can't if you just remove the names and you put all of the effects and dangers of these products on a sheet of paper and listed them out realistically, not no,
Mhm.
the worst of the worst for all of them. There's no way that you would pick to legalize alcohol, tobacco, and soft drinks over marijuana. You just wouldn't do it. You would
Look,
not
man,
do it. It
I
just it's
definitely
crazy,
I definitely agree with you about the first two. I think you're right about the dangers of soft drinks. I don't know if I would put that above perhaps marijuana, but I definitely think but
yeah.
marijuana is certainly, when it comes to
It depends on how you
tobacco and
ingest the marijuana,
alcohol.
I would say. It
Well,
depends on
it does.
yeah.
Yeah, it does. And I will say, inhalation of anything, I don't care what it is. Inhalation of anything is going to create problems for people that, I don't care if you're talking about tobacco, marijuana, smoking your pipe, whatever it is. My Uncle Grady lived to be in his mid-90s, I think, and he smoked a pipe all his life. But you know what? He died in the mid-80s, I think, and they just don't make them like they used
Yeah,
to.
yeah, right. That's
So,
yeah.
whatever he was smoking, he was
Yeah.
tough enough to make. This modern man and woman,
Yeah.
we ain't built
Yeah.
like that.
That's
So,
I know, man. I had my great grandmother, man. I remember growing up, she would smoke a carton a day. of Viceroy cigarettes, a carton a
a day.
Yeah, she'd go through them, man.
Wow.
I mean, she was killing it.
Yeah.
She did not die of cancer, did not have emphysema, had no lung issues at all, as far as I'm aware. And so, I mean, but that's it. You're right. Listen, that's an oddity. Okay. It's an oddity. There are dangers to these things. And, and look, I get some of the worry, and some of them wanting to, to keep kids off of certain things and all that. And listen, you're not talking to somebody that's, like a big weed person or something here either. I don't smoke or take marijuana
I never
myself.
have. Still no. Yeah.
But I'm again, practically looking at these things and judging them based on just the facts that we know. One is clearly better than these other products, and you're trying to outlaw the other based on this, long held nonsense about it. It just, I don't know. It just, and to me, you can't, I have the same problem with I'll tell you this, I have the same problem with doing what they're doing to these folks that have the vape stores and all this other stuff as I had with Milton McGregor way back when you went in and said, oh, here's businessman of the year, Milton McGregor, for building up electronic bingo and, and creating these businesses and running 5,000 jobs and having all this stuff going. And then a few months later deciding that what he was doing was illegal, just arbitrarily, and that's bullshit, man. It's bullshit. Either it's illegal on the front, you shouldn't license it, or it's illegal. It's legal. And you've got to figure out a way, if you want to properly regulate it. Okay. But you can't do both. Okay. I think it's just bullshit the way that they're trying to do this with them. And I wish that some cooler heads would prevail in this stuff. All right. Right-wing nut.
All right.
Our right-wing nut is Decatur Mayor Tab Bowling. Tab Bowling, I went, and you probably have not paid much attention to this, unless you're over in Decatur or in this general area and watch the news, which is somehow still on. So Bowling this week, he took issue, Councilman Billy Jackson, over in Decatur, made some comments during a city council meeting in which he claimed that a police officer had posed as someone working with the city's HR department to get information about incoming police chief Tory Mack. They've recently hired a new police chief after the fallout from the Stephen Perkins shooting and murder. And so they've hired a new police chief, and his name is Tory Mack. And this person, posing as an HR person, called to a former co-worker, I guess, of Mack's, a police chief in another city, and had asked him for the good and bad on Tory Mack, posing as though he was working for the city and looking to just get basic information about him. And of course, Billy Jackson took issue with this police officer doing this, posing as somebody who he's not. Tab Bowling then holds a press conference in which he accuses Billy Jackson of, let me quote it right here, he created another false narrative, is what he says of Jackson. And of the police officer, he says, this is Bowling, he said he didn't do it, and I believe him. He is one of the most respected officers that wears the uniform. He absolutely did it. Okay. He absolutely did it. There's no question that he did it. The reporter for WHNT, great job by the reporter for WHNT. And if I wish I could, let me make sure. Let's see if I can call her name. Maggie Madison is her name. Maggie Madison called the police chief in question. If it mentions it in this particular story here, Councilman. I'm trying to scout. I'm sorry. Fultondale Police Chief Marcel Walker is who this police officer called, posing as the HR person. He called Walker. Walker said he talked to Madison when she called him from the TV station and said, "Yeah, got called. Said he was working for the HR department at Decatur. Wanted to know the good and bad about Tory Mack." He said, Wasn't a whole lot of bad, so the phone call didn't last very long. He said, I even offered to let him speak to my wife. This is the Fultondale police chief. So he offered to let the guy talk to his wife, who had worked with Mac at the police training academy, to let him know, what a great guy he is and how thorough he is and how he had trained police officers and was a good dude. Didn't really have any interest in that. And they hung up. It was a short phone call. Then it turns out the guy had also had a note put in his HR file. He'd been written up and some disciplinary action taken, and he put it in his HR file. He 100% did it. I mean, it's just, there's no question that he did it. And here, so now you've got the mayor attacking the city councilman, and it's ludicrous. I don't.
Well, I guess the first thought I had when you were telling me about this was, why would the mayor automatically assume that, Billy Jackson, and I've known, I've dealt with Billy Jackson, not a whole lot, but on and off for probably 25 years or something as a reporter and a columnist and a broadcaster. Say what you want about Billy Jackson. One thing I've always believed about Billy Jackson was that Billy Jackson was a man of integrity. I've never had any reason at all to doubt that when Billy Jackson says something, he knows it or he absolutely believes it. So my first thought is, well, why would the mayor assume that Billy Jackson was making something up? Why would that be his go-to, as opposed to maybe saying, maybe Councilman Jackson got some bad information?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's, so it almost makes me think there's something else at the seat of this.
It makes me think that.
Do you agree with me?
Yeah, 100% I agree with you. You listen,
Okay.
let me tell you what Billy is. Billy's a pain in the ass for people who want things to stay to status quo. That's what Billy is. Billy's a pain in the ass for those people who say, oh, it's good enough for the north side, in Decatur. That's who he creates. He creates situations that are tense, that often require people to take a hard look at themselves, for people to think about things differently than what they've thought about them, and for people to treat others that may not always be treated the best in a better way. That's what Billy has done for his entire year. You may not like the way he does it, okay? And I have some friends who bitch constantly about Billy and his, all the time talking about race and stuff. I thought, well, look, if you lived the life that Billy lived, maybe you would talk about race yourself. All right. If you see the people that Billy represents, maybe you would talk about race the same way. If you had to advocate for that group of people, maybe you would advocate in the same way. I don't know why he's got to be so angry. Well, maybe it pisses you off to see people treated the way that he's seen people treated.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure,
maybe it gets under your skin a little bit to see that day after day, to take the phone calls that he takes, to listen to the stories that he listens to all the time. Don't act like this has been some virtue of racial harmony over in Decatur over here. We've reported on a number of different stories about things, about the Stephen Perkins shooting, about the racism that was taking place in the damn retirement homes over there that they were running. I mean, does anybody remember that shit? I mean, it was blatant racism that was taking place. So listen, I'm perfectly happy with Billy he's represented his district well, and he should continue on doing it the same way he's been doing it and not take any of this crap from anybody. All right. I'm perfectly happy with that. And by the way, he's 100% right about this. Okay. He not a little bit, it may be his view. He may be mostly, no, 100%. This happened. And so what it makes me wonder is, when you raise the question about why would the mayor be acting this way, it makes me wonder what involvement the mayor may have had in this. That's what it makes me wonder, because, the mayor quite famously did not want the outgoing police chief to resign. The mayor wanted to pick his own police chief to appoint over there, who fought openly with a lot of members of the council about the selection of the police chief, has been very critical of their selection process throughout this ordeal. And so it makes me think that maybe somebody, I just find it odd that a police officer would have taken it upon himself to make that phone call and say he's working for HR.
Yeah, because I think if I understand just you know, a little bit about law and the English language, I think you would call that fraud, would you not? I mean,
Well,
if you're
yeah,
impersonating
yeah,
someone or you're purporting to be someone you're not, especially if you're doing it as you know, you're claiming to represent a public official, even if that
uh-huh,
public official hasn't been named, you know, you're claiming to be something you're not, and you're doing it to get access to official information
yeah.
about something that is an administrative official you know, transaction, which is the hiring of somebody to be a police chief. Seems like to me that would be there ought to be some criminal charges that could be brought, it seems to me.
I don't know.
Maybe
I
I'm
mean,
wrong,
yeah,
but that's what I think.
but certainly there should be some disciplinary action taken. I think they've done that. And so I, you know, I just, I'll tell you, man, and I mentioned this before we started this segment, and
Hmm.
recording, but I am, I've never, I've rarely been more disappointed in a public official than I have been in Tab Bowling. I honestly would have told you a couple years ago that Tab Bowling was a good person and a good mayor, that that would handle things level headedly. Would You may not always agree with him. I certainly wouldn't have always agreed with him, but there's somebody that you could count on to be reasonable in tough situations. And what has happened with bowling over the course of the last 2 years, in the wake of the Perkins murder, is I mean, it's hard to wrap my head around. I don't honestly. I've never seen somebody take such a the opposite trek than what you expected. When his thing first started, and he started making those videos about what was going on with the city, and how it could be handled and all these different things. That's who I thought Tab Bowling was, and he was pretty widely praised at that point for handling it that way. And then somewhere along the way, this thing slid off the rails. And it has been just one misstep, one crazy act, one egregious statement, the leaving during the council meetings, because he doesn't want to hear the public comments, the this not showing up to some meetings, the attacking Jacob Ladner, it was the city council president over there, because he made a video at one point, for the Chamber of Commerce's deal. It's just, I like, who is this person?
Well,
And
is he term limited, Josh? Is
he's just
he?
not running again. He's is
Oh,
from
he's
what I
not running
understand. He's
again. Okay.
chosen not to
Okay.
run again, and I mean, I think that's
Well,
best
that
for
sounds like a
everybody
good thing.
involved.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say that sounds like a good
I mean,
thing.
it just I've never seen somebody take a turn like this, and I don't know why it's happened, and I know of him, somewhat, and his family and stuff, and I just, like I said, I've always thought of him as a good person, and somebody that would have handled this so much better than he has. And it's just, you watch these things, and it's like it's a different person talking, man. I've never seen anything like it, and I don't
Well,
know. It's just this,
maybe he's going. You know,
maybe,
people
yeah. We never
sometimes
know.
have things
You're
going
right.
on. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. You
Yeah.
never know with people, and I just wish, this had gone differently. I think it would have not only helped him, if he'd handled it in a different way. I think it would have helped him and the way he's dealing with it, and I think it would have, more importantly, helped so many people that have been so upset by what's happened with Stephen Perkins and the Decatur Police Department. And which, by the way, we haven't even gotten into the other one, the other situation in which another person died in custody over there, after a mental health episode. And, and more lies that came out of the Decatur Police Department on this. Man, I hope the new police chief coming in can clean up some of this nonsense and get rid of some of these people that are handling a lot of this stuff over there. I'll give him all the support in the world if he can do that. But because this is, it's just, It's just terrible, man. It just really is. The whole situation is terrible. It's I grew up there. My family still lives there. It really bothers me a lot the way this has gone down. It really does.
Yeah, I can tell, and you have every right to be upset from everything you've shared with me and shared with us and our listeners. So hopefully, like you said, the new chief can come in and clean some of this up.
Boy, I hope so. But hey, speaking of cleaning up, we're gonna clean up and get ourselves out of here, out of your lives.
All right.
This is one less thing. If you've been listening, this is one less thing you've got to do for the rest of the day. Is listen to us. So until next week, y'all be safe out there.
Peace.